Good day all and welcome once again to my channel. This time we are going to be having a biology revision class in the forthcoming Jamb 2024 examination. So for those of you that are writing biology in the forthcoming Jamb, I would want you to be very attentive, and then as I run through this series, I'll be touching areas that will be of help to you. So you just follow through as I run through the series. All right. So on the board we are having about 11 questions. So to start with, we are going to start with question 1. Now question 1, it's given: insectivorous plants traps and kills insects to derive dash. Insectivorous plants traps and kills insects to derive dash. So first and foremost, we have to understand what insectivorous plants are. What are insectivorous plants? Now, these insectivorous plants, they are simply plants that are also called carnivorous plants. Now, when I say carnivorous plants, I don't mean that they are plants that literally feeds on animals. Plants do not have mouths to feed on animals. So what happens is this: they feed on insects. That's why you can also refer to them as insectivorous plants. And basically, the reason why they feed on insects is because they are found growing on soils that are deficient in nitrogen. And of course, you know that nitrogen is needed for protein synthesis, that is the manufacturing of proteins. So these plants, since they are found growing on soils that are deficient in nitrogen, they will be unable to synthesize or to produce proteins. So for them to have a supplement of nitrogen, they can get it elsewhere, since they can't get them in the soil. It's not present in the soil. So what they do is this: they set trap for reckless flying insects, and then they tend to allow the reckless flying insect to get stuck to them. And when this reckless flying insect gets stuck to them, what happens? They will not derive nutrients, and that nutrient usually comes in the form of nitrogen. We have classical examples of insectivorous plants like the sundew. Now, the sundew is also called Drosera. Then we have the pitcher plant, or you can call it the Nepenthes. We have the Venus flytrap. We have the bladderwort. We also have even butterwort. All right. So these are examples of carnivorous or insectivorous plants. And mind you, never should you mistake carnivorous or insectivorous plants for parasitic plants. When we talk about parasitic plants, we are simply referring to plants that they become parasites to their host plants. And host plants, they are usually higher plants. So what happens is this: these parasitic plants, they will tend to, let's say this is the bark of a tree, and this is their host plant. They will tend to get stuck at the back, and then they will inject something more or less like a siphon into the back of the plant in order to obtain nutrients from the sap. You get? So now that device that they use to inject into the cell sap of the host plant is called ostorium. Now ostorium is singular while ostoria is plural. So generally we have examples of parasitic plants, which includes the doda. We have the doda plant. Then we also have the mistletoes, or you can call them the loranthus. And then we also have the witchweed, which are the striga species. All right. So these are examples of parasitic plants. So never should you mistake the parasitic plants for the carnivorous or insectivorous plants. So coming back to this, question 1: insectivorous plants traps and kills insects to derive dash. I've just said it, that they derive what? Nitrogen from the insects. All right, because they are found growing on soils that are deficient in nitrogen. Question 2: metabolic production of urea is carried out in the dash. Metabolic production of urea is carried out in the dash. Now, never should you mistake urea for urine. Now, urea is done or produced by the liver, then urine is produced by the kidneys. All right. So please, never should you mistake urea for urine. All right. So the metabolic production of urea is carried out in the liver. So the answer is B. All right. In fact, you know that the end product of protein digestion being amino acids, And of course, amino acids, we don't have storage organs for them. They don't store excess amino acids in our body. Hence, due to the fact that we don't have storage organs or storage tissues for them, they are mopped up by the liver, and then they form that urea. That process is called deamination. All right, that's one of the functions of the liver. All right, so that's the answer, liver. Then number 3, osteomalacia is a symptom of the deficiency of what? Osteomalacia is a symptom of the deficiency of what? Now, when we say osteo, anything that has to do with osteo is concerned or connected with the bones. All right, and in terms of osteomalacia, we are referring to a kind of deficiency defect that arises in adults as a result of the deficiency of vitamin D. When vitamin D is deficient in one's diet, especially for adults, it results in this condition, which is the fragility, softness of the bones. This osteomalacia, which is connected with the bones or is concerned with the bones, is to adults. In children, the deficiency of vitamin D leads to rickets. All right, so rickets in children, osteomalacia in adults. So the correct answer is C, vitamin D. Then next question. We are told in question 4 that muscles are usually attached to bones by the dash. Muscles are usually attached to bones by the dash. It's very easy for you to actually get the answer to this. Muscles are connected to bones by means of tendons. Don't forget this. Then while bones are connected to bones by means of ligaments. So never should you mistake one for the other. All right, muscles to bones, tendons; bones to bones, ligaments. So the correct answer is option D. Let's dive into looking at the next question. Question 5. The main role of xylin is to transport dash. The main role of xylin is to transport dash. Firstly, we have to know what xylin is. Xylin is simply a vascular tissue in plants. And when we say vascular tissue, we are simply referring to tissues that tend to transport materials. All right, it is not only the xylem that you have, even the phloem. Now, plants that possess these two vascular tissues, they are called vascular plants. All right, and basically these two, they help in the transportation of materials in vascular plants. Now, what material is being transported by the xylem? There are two. We have water and mineral salts. Water and mineral salts. That's the work of the xylem, is to transport water and mineral salts. Then while the phloem is to carry out what is called translocation. And what is translocation? The transportation of already manufactured food from the leaves to other parts of a plant. And of course, the direction it takes for xylem is unidirectional, only to one direction, from the roots. The water and the mineral salt, they are transported upwards, unidirectional. The while that of the phloem is bidirectional, meaning it travels both upwards and downwards. All right, so the correct answer to that question 5 is water and mineral salt, which is option C. Then let's see question 6. Question 6. Deoxygenated blood flows into the right and left lungs through the dash. Now, when many students see a question like this, they will be tempted to pick in any option that contains veins. And that thing is wrong, because now their own mindset is this: anything that has to do with deoxygenated blood should be connected with the veins. Normally, if you have read your textbook thoroughly, you'll be told that the veins, they carry what? Deoxygenated blood. Then while the arteries, they carry what? Oxygenated blood. That's normal. That's correct. Arteries are concerned with carrying oxygenated blood. Then while veins, they carry what? Deoxygenated blood, no doubt. But the question, they said, deoxygenated blood flows into the right and left lungs through the dash, into the right and left lungs. Now, if you take a good look at the heart is divided into 2 parts and 4 chambers. The 2 parts, we have the right part and the left part. And the left part of the heart is concerned with carrying oxygenated blood, while the right part is concerned with carrying deoxygenated blood. So when that oxygenated blood gets to the left part of the heart, it is transported to different body parts, different organs of the body via the aorta. That's the largest artery. Then when these different body organs must have utilized the oxygen content in the blood, then they would not be drained, that's the deoxygenated blood now that are left, would not be drained by their respective veins. Now when these veins now pick them and then drains them into the heart, they drain them into the heart through the vena cava, talking about the inferior and the superior vena cava. As soon as it is being drained, it is drained into the right part of the heart. Remember, the right part of the heart carries deoxygenated blood. Now, the moment it gets to the right part of the heart, you know that normally the heart would not carry this deoxygenated blood, and there's a vessel in it to carry it and take it back to the lungs for another cycle of reoxygenation, meaning this deoxygenated blood would not be reoxygenated. Oxygen will not be supplied to them in the lungs. So that blood vessel that carries that deoxygenated blood in the heart to the lungs is called pulmonary artery. Now, pulmonary artery is the only artery that carries deoxygenated blood. Then while pulmonary vein is the only vein that carries oxygenated blood. You get the point? So pulmonary artery carries deoxygenated, that's the only artery that carries that. Then while pulmonary vein carries what? Oxygenated blood. All right, so take cognizance of that. So it means the correct answer to this question is pulmonary artery. Let's quickly look at question 7. Now for question 7, we are told that excess water in plants is excreted as water vapor and as droplets respectively. True. Now there are two things there. We have water vapor and we have droplets. That's water droplets. Now this water vapor is concerned with what? With transpiration. Transpiration. Then while the droplet is concerned with guttation. Guttation. All right. Now transpiration simply is the loss of water in the form of vapor through the margins of the leaves of plants. It could even be through the stems of some plants. Now through the leaves could be through the corticals of the leaves or through the stomata, that's those tiny openings present on the surface of leaves. That's called stomata transpiration. Or through the stems, the shoot of some plants, talking about the lenticels, that's lenticular transpiration. You get. So that one is for transpiration, loss of water in the form of vapor. Then while loss of water in the form of droplets is called guttation. And guttation is seen to usually occur early in the morning, and it takes place through some special structures that are called hydatodes. Hydatodes present on the surface of some leaves, all right, of plants. So the correct answer is actually transpiration and guttation. Transpiration and guttation. So what option do we have that? We have it in option B. All right. So without wasting much time, question 8. Yeast respires anaerobically to convert simple sugar to carbon dioxide and dash. First and foremost, yeast respires anaerobically. Anaerobically. When we say anaerobically, what does that mean? It means the respiration that occurs in the absence of oxygen. All right? And you see yeast. Yeast is a fungus, and it happens to be a unicellular fungus. In fact, amongst all fungi, the only unicellular fungus is what? Yeast. And its scientific name is Saccharomyces cerevisiae. Saccharomyces cerevisiae. All right? Now, you see, yeast is actually what is used during fermentation of some large organic molecules, such as those polysaccharides like the starch. Now, because yeast can supply a series of enzymes for the reaction. Okay, so now when it respires anaerobically in the absence of oxygen, there are two products that you get. Firstly, if we are working with glucose, which is C6H12O6, it tends to get converted to C2H5OH, which is ethanol, with the release of CO2. So basically, the anaerobic respiration of yeast produces two products. And what are the two products? Ethanol, which is alcohol, a member of the alcohol, and what? CO2, which is carbon dioxide. All right. And one thing very important that you need to know is this: anaerobic respiration of yeast is also called alcoholic fermentation. alcoholic fermentation. That's another name for the anaerobic respiration of yeast, alcoholic fermentation. So the correct option to this question is D, alcohol. That's alcohol, which is in the form of ethanol and CO2. Let's progress. Question 9. The kidney is connected to the bladder by the dash. The kidney is connected to the bladder by the dash. Okay, let's just take a glance at the structure of kidney. All right. Now, we can have this kind of diagrammatic representation of kidneys. All right. Now, if you take a glance at the kidneys, they are like bean shape, all right, and then they are linked to the bladder, all right, they are linked to the bladder, and then if you take a glance, of course, this is one part of the kidney, because we have a pair of kidneys, then we now have something like this. Now, if you look at this part is called the cortex of the kidney. Then while this part, the inner part, this is the outer part, then the inner part is called the medulla. And lastly, we have the pelvis, all right? Then that's it. Now, if you look at this diagram, this kidney is connected to this large sac here, which is known as the bladder, by this tube, which is known as the ureter. Now, ureter is what links the kidney to the bladder, all right? Then while this part that expels maybe the urine out, finally, is called the urethra. Urethra, all right? This urethra is considered to be a urinogenital organ. Of course, it allows the passage of urine as well as some sex garment is involved in sexual reproduction also, all right? So the correct answer to that question is the ureter. So it is the ureter that connects the kidney to the bladder, all right? Then question 10. Question 10. Let's look at question 10. The hormone whose deficiency in a child would cause reduced mental and physical growth is, now, when you study endocrinology, that is talking about the study of hormones and also the glands that secrete them, all right? That's endocrinology. Endocrine glands, they are basically glands that secrete hormones, all right? So now, if you study it, you'll get to know that we have different kinds of hormones, of which one of the hormones that is very important in terms of regulating basal metabolism, which is the oxidation of glucose in the body, happens to be thyroxine. Now, you see this thyroxine is secreted by the thyroid gland, and this thyroid gland is found in the neck region. It doesn't only secrete this thyroxine, it also secretes other hormones. Like we have hormones like the calcitonin, we have hormones like the triiodothyronine, that's T3 hormone. This one is regarded as T4 hormone. All right. Now, this thyroxine in children, when it is deficient, it results in a condition called cretinism. Cretinism. Now, this cretinism, a child suffering from it is called a cretin. And what are the symptoms associated with cretinism? The child will be physically, sexually, and mentally retarded, meaning that there is physical, there is mental, and sexual retardation in the life of the child. All right? In the life of the child. Okay? So, looking at that, since there is physical, sexual, and mental retardation in the child, then the condition is called what? Cretinism. And the hormone, when it is deficient, results in that is called what? Thyroxine. So thyroxine is actually the correct answer. Then let's see question 11. Question 11. Now, the antidiuretic hormone is secreted by the dash. Antidiuretic hormone is secreted by the dash. That is talking about ADH. Antidiuretic hormone. Another name for this hormone is called vasopressin. All right? Now, this hormone, they said, is secreted by the dash. And if you are very, very conversant with hormonal coordination, you get to know that the pituitary gland is called the master gland because its secretion influences the activities of other glands. And we have two regions of the pituitary gland. We have the anterior pituitary gland and we have the posterior pituitary gland. Now, these different regions, they secrete hormones. The anterior secretes more hormones than the posterior. The posterior only secretes two hormones. And what are the two hormones? The oxytocin and the ADH, which is antidiuretic hormone. While anterior secretes the prolactin, we have the somatotropic hormones that's talking about growth hormones. We have even the gonadotropic hormones. Gonadotropic hormones, they are also secreted by the anterior. So the correct answer to this question is the posterior pituitary gland, which is option A. So we are going to continue looking at question 12. All right, now to question 12. The part of the brain which controls intellectual activity is called dash. The part of the brain which controls intellectual activity is called dash. Now, this question is taking our mind to the nervous system, talking about the nervous coordination. Of course, you know that we have the CNS and the PNS, which is the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system is basically made up of the brain and the spinal cord. And considering the brain, we have three divisions or three portions of the brain. We have the forebrain, the midbrain, and the hindbrain. Now, the forebrain is made up of four parts: cerebrum, olfactory lobe, thalamus, and hypothalamus. In fact, you can use a code to remembering it. COTH. Cerebrum, olfactory lobe, thalamus, and hypothalamus. They make up the forebrain. Then while the midbrain is made up of auditory nerves, and it acts as a link connecting the forebrain to the hindbrain. And for the hindbrain, it's made up of cerebellum. Then we have the pons varoli, and we have the medulla oblongata. Now, for the cerebellum, it is referred to as the little brain. It regulates body positioning or posture, while that of cerebrum is the one that regulates intelligent work, talking about reasoning, thinking, judgment, interpretation, analysis. So the work of the cerebrum is for intelligent work. So the correct answer is option B. Then question 13. The ability of the eyes to focus on both near and distant objects is termed dash. A is image formation, that's not it. B is refraction. C is hypermetropia. D, accommodation. B is talking about bending of light rays. So this one is not even it. Then while hypermetropia is an eye defect, which is also called long-sightedness. So that is not it. Then accommodation is actually the correct answer because it is the ability of the eyes to focus on both near and far objects on the retina. Remember, we have three layers of the eyes. We have the sclerotic layer or sclera for short, which is the outermost. Then we have the middle, which is the choroid, and then we have the innermost, which is the retina. And retina of the eyes is considered to be the photosensitive part of the eyes. Why? Because it contains photoreceptors, talking about the rods and the cones. The cones are sensitive to daylight or vision of the day, while the rods, they are sensitive to dim light or vision of the night. So get that straight. So the correct answer is option D, accommodation of the eyes. Then question 14. Hygrometer is used for measuring dash. Hygrometer. Hygrometer is used for measuring dash. When we say hygrometer, it's different from hydrometer. Pay attention to this. Hygrometer is used for measuring relative humidity, while hydrometer is used for measuring relative density. Please take note of this. This one is for relative density, then while the other is for relative humidity. So please don't mistake one for the other. So the correct answer is option A. All right. Of course, we have other instruments there like other abiotic factors and their instruments. Now, looking at specific gravity, and that's looking at rainfall and looking at wind speed. They have their various instruments that can be used for measuring them. When you study your abiotic factors, talking about rainfall, it can be measured using rain gauge. Talking about wind speed, we have wind direction and wind speed. Wind direction is measured using what is called wind vane. Then while wind speed is measured using an instrument called anemometer. All right. So next question, not to waste time. Plants adapted for life in salt marshes are called any plant that can grow successfully in water that is having a high salinity content is called an halophyte. So the correct answer is option C, halophyte. Generally, hydrophytes, they are plants that can grow in water. Then xerophytes, they are plants that can grow in dry lands like the desert. Epiphytes, they are plants that grow on other plants. not necessarily being parasitic. They just grow on other plants. All right. So that's about that. Then number 16. Paternity disputes can most accurately be resolved through the use of, this answer is very, very obvious, that it is DNA analysis. Because when a father is saying that I'm not the real father of this child, or when a father is doubting the child's whereabouts or how did the child come, then they can carry out DNA, take the DNA sample of the child and that of the father and make comparison if it's actually truly the father. Because paternity talks about father, all right? So the correct answer is DNA analysis. Then the next, if a DNA strand has a base sequence, TCA, its complementary strand must be, one thing that you need to know about the DNA is this, that the DNA is found in the gene, which happens to be the basic unit of inheritance. DNA, the full meaning is deoxyribonucleic acid. All right, that's the full meaning of DNA. And you see this DNA, according to Francis Crick and James Watson, they describe the DNA strand as a twisted ladder or staircase that is capable of zipping apart. And this DNA is made up of 4 nitrogenous bases. And these bases, they are paired. What are the 4 nitrogenous bases? We have the guanine, we have cytosine, we have adenine, and we have thymine. In fact, there was a man called Erwin Chagaf. He brought about the Chagaf's rule of base pairing in terms of DNA strands. And what was the Chagaf's rule? It's called GCAT. GCAT simply means guanine always pairs with what? Cytosine, while adenine always pairs with thymine. All right, so that's just the rule. Whenever you have guanine, it must pair with cytosine. Then whenever you have adenine, it must pair with what? Thymine. So they gave us this. They said TCA. Of course, you know thymine always pairs with what? Let's check. Thymine always pairs with what? Adenine, which is A. Then cytosine always pairs with what? Guanine, which is G. And adenine always pairs with what? Thymine, which is T. So the correct answer to this question is AGT. AGT. We have it in option C. So that's the correct answer. That's the Chagaf's rule. Don't forget this rule called the Chagaf's. The Chagaf's rule. All right? Chagaf's rule. So don't forget. GCAT. So now, next question. Which of the following is responsible for contributing the chromosome that determines the sex of an unborn offspring? It's very, very easy. Now, you ought to know that the father carries the X gametic sperm and the Y gametic sperm, meaning X and Y in terms of the sperm, while the mother always carries the X and X, which is the egg. So it means that when this X gametic sperm fertilizes the X gametic egg, it gives XX offspring. But when the Y fertilizes the X, it gives what? XY. And one thing that you need to know, XX offspring is a female offspring, while XY offspring is what? A male offspring. So it is dependent on the father. It is only what fertilizes the egg that matters. If it is the X, it should be female. If it is Y, it is what? The male. So it is the father that determines the sex of a baby. All right? So that's that about that. Then question 19. The nitrogenous base found in RNA but not in DNA is? The nitrogenous base found in RNA but not in DNA is? Now remember I said the nitrogenous bases in DNA. We have guanine, don't forget, we have cytosine, then we have adenine, that's for DNA, and we have thymine. This is for DNA. Then for RNA, there is something that is not found in DNA that is found in RNA. For RNA, it is guanine. Guanine, it is common. We have cytosine, is also present there. Then we have adenine, is also found in RNA, but thymine is not found. It is now replaced with uracil. So these are the 4 that are present in RNA. All right. So in place of thymine, there is now what? Uracil. So that uracil is the correct answer. It's not found in DNA, but it's found in RNA. Then question 20. The center for controlling body temperature in the brain is the dash. The center for controlling body temperature in the brain is the dash. Now, the correct answer to this question happens to be the hypothalamus. I use a code to remembering it. That the hypothalamus generalized function, I use this code starter. Starter. And what's the full meaning of starter? S stands for sleep. Then T stands for temperature. Temperature. Then A stands for anger or aggression. Then T again stands for taste. And A stands for appetite. Alright? So these are the generalized function of the hypothalamus, which is option D. As a matter of fact, the hypothalamus is considered to be the master to the master glands when you are taking your mind to hormonal coordination. And like I said in one of the questions that I treated not quite long, I said that the pituitary gland is the master gland. So there is a master to that pituitary gland, which happens to be the hypothalamus. All right. So it's my hope that you've been able to understand something from this lesson. I just pray that in the forthcoming Jamb, questions will just be coming left and right from these angles that we have just treated. And it's with my hope that you'll be able to attempt them and come out with flying colors. My prayer for you guys is that this will be your last Jamb ever. You'll come out with outstanding results. All right. So stay tuned to this channel and don't forget to hit the like button if you like this video. Invite your friends to be partaker of this beautiful thing that you've just benefited as well. All right. So thanks for watching. And don't forget to subscribe. You can subscribe to the channel to get, you turn on your notification bell to get updates as soon as I upload any new content. Thanks for watching once again, and I wish you guys all the best.